Coming up on the show, Georgia Supreme Court has taken action against the state's election board. We're going to examine how this could shape next year's midterms. Also, progress is being made on a massive infrastructure project, years in the making. We're going to talk about why it's needed. And we're going to find out what's behind a rise in gun deaths in young people. This is The Take. Let's go. Hello and welcome. I'm Chesley McNeil, and this is The Take. Yeah, now you're an hour long. We're doing it, folks. We're really doing it. We go above and beyond the headlines. We look at the why and how stories are impacting you and your community. We invite the experts in because their expertise and their take on today's top stories. We also try to have just a little bit of fun as well. Let's start you out with this. Yesterday, the Supreme Court unanimously struck down 4 rules enacted last year by the state election board, finding that the body exceeded lawful authority. Those rules involve the hand counting ballots after polls close, photo ID and signatures requirements, and in-person delivery of absentee ballots, reasonable inquiry before certifying county results, and unrestricted access to election documents by county board members. Here to break all that down for us is Professor Gillespie, who joins us from Emory University, Department of Political Science. Welcome back to the show, Professor. How you doing?
Good. How are you doing? Thanks for having me.
All right. Always. What is the state's Supreme Court saying about yesterday's ruling?
Well, this case is really interesting because it kind of ties into some things that happened nationally at the U.S. Supreme Court last year. So last year, the U.S. Supreme Court overruled the Chevron doctrine, which said that courts would have to give deference to administrative agencies in terms of how they interpreted rules and regulations. And so what that did was that gave agencies not quite carte blanche, but it gave them a lot of latitude in terms of how to interpret regulations and in terms of how they were going to implement what came from the legislature. What the elimination of the Chevron rule says is that now judges can sort of look at how rules are being implemented and how they're being written, and they can say whether or not that's constitutional or not. And so what's happening in this case is that the state Supreme Court is looking at Georgia legislation, and they're saying that the State Board of Elections kind of overstepped its authority in terms of creating rules that they would argue don't actually align with the statute.
So the justices upheld one rule allowing video surveillance over the drop boxes during early voting. Why is that important?
Well, I mean, so there are some rules that could be considered reasonable, and then there are some rules that the Supreme Court has ruled are not reasonable and don't necessarily align with the letter of the law. So the takeaway of this is that the Georgia General Assembly, if they so choose, could go back and very specifically empower the State Board of Elections to do the things that the state Supreme Court has argued are unconstitutional at this point, or they could just let the matter ride. And not do anything, and these policies that the State Board of Elections was trying to put into effect, go away.
Do you think any of these changes could affect the voter confidence in how elections are run?
Well, I mean, voter confidence in elections is very partisan in terms of how people perceive elections. There is a chance that this year, sort of coming on the heels of the 2024 election, Republicans who were concerned about election security may not have the same types of concerns because their candidate ended up winning the election. I think, there are a lot of Democrats who would be relieved by these rulings because they were the ones who were raising concerns about some of these rules, giving county election boards and some election officials more power than they thought was appropriate to hold up the certification of elections. And there was the concern that they were going to invoke these rules to perhaps stop the certification of an election whose results they didn't like. So I think it will be really interesting to see how the General Assembly takes this up and if they take it up at all.
Could you see this as a trend in limiting agencies' power across the country?
Well, I mean, yeah, with the elimination of the Chevron doctrine, that was the concern that you were going to have courts who are now going to be looking at regulations in ways that they hadn't before and actually kind of going through and determining that some regulations were unconstitutional.
Okay, so last question for you. What might this mean for the 2026-2028 election oversight here in Georgia?
So, I mean, you're still going to see oversight of elections. You're still going to see things that Democrats don't like in terms of election enforcement. I think the big test is going to be if there are surprising results in the election, if there are very close election results, do both sides actually accept the results of the election with the rules as they have already kind of been established? What you could see is some more Monday morning quarterbacking after the election if one side or the other isn't satisfied with election results.
How about any more changes maybe coming down the pike before our elections start here?
And that's always a possibility. I mean, there are election law proposals that happen in every General Assembly session, and I would not be surprised if in the upcoming General Assembly election session that you don't see legislators who might actually try to correct or try to overturn some of these things in the Supreme Court ruling.
Wow, you hear these changes coming down the pike, it alerts a lot of people. What should we be prepared for with these changes, or what should we be looking for?
So I would just tell people to make sure that you are apprised of the rules and that you are aware of your rights, and that every time you go to vote, and I'll remind people that there's an election going on right now for the primary for the Public Service Commission, that you remember everything that you need to bring with you, that you ask questions, that you go early, and that if you have any problems, that you make sure that you know to go talk to election protection workers. So you can Google their hotline, or you can go to make appeals to your election officials if you think that your rights have been violated.
Got it. Professor Gillespie, always appreciate your insight. You always bring so much to the table. A lot for us to learn. We'll be calling on you.
Thank you.
Keep your phone handy. Thanks a lot. Really appreciate you joining us today. All right, folks. Well, it's going to be hot for today. In fact, probably the hottest day of the week. We're looking at 88 degrees for the afternoon high temperatures. Only a 20% chance that we can see an isolated shower or two popping up in the area, and mainly from Atlanta southward is where you're going to find that. Our northern counties, I think you'll be fine for today with mostly sunny skies in a lot of those areas for today. Winds will be light as well. 86 for the high temperature on Thursday. We got a 40% chance for scattered showers and thunderstorms to return to the area. That moisture coming back in. You couple that with the heating, and of course we'll get these isolated thunderstorms. Unfortunately, we're going to stay in this pattern for the rest of the work week, into the weekend, and into next week as well. Our temperatures will remain about steady in the mid to upper 80s as we go along. Some days where we get more rain, obviously that temperature will be lower. Where we get less rain, obviously the temperature will be a little bit higher. So we'll continue to watch that for you as we go along. Hey, you're watching The Take. Don't go anywhere. We got plenty more stories for you coming up. You don't want to miss them. Last night in Brookhaven, hundreds gathered along Beaufort Highway to protest recent federal immigration raids. Demonstrators carried signs and shared emotional stories, but eventually law enforcement took action. We're told at least 6 people were arrested and 3 patrol cars were damaged. Organizers vowed to continue these protests in solidarity with immigrant families, arguing raids tear apart communities. It's a scene similar to the one being played out in recent days in Los Angeles. NBC's Chris Pallone joins us now from Washington, D.C. And Chris, these demonstrations are flaring up across the country. What are we hearing from the White House about these nationwide rises in unrest?
Yeah, Chesley, essentially the president is saying that he reserves the right to send troops wherever they are needed. He continues to insist that Los Angeles would have burned to the ground, a bit of hyperbole there, but it said that the city would have burned to the ground if he had not sent troops into there. It's important to take this all in context. The area that was under curfew last night and where most of this happening is a 1 square mile area of downtown Los Angeles in a city of about 500 square miles. So just to put it in a little bit of context, but the president essentially says that violence on the streets, law and order disruption will not be tolerated. And so as you know, these protests continue to grow, he reserves the right to send the military. And NBC News has learned from 2 sources that special response teams from ICE are going to be sent to 5 cities run by Democratic leadership at some point soon. Those cities, Seattle, Chicago, New York, Philadelphia, and here in Washington, D.C. So more ICE raids are expected in cities across the country, and of course you could expect to see more protests when that happens. So
because those raids are going to continue, what should people like us here in Atlanta expect next?
Hey, you never know when these vehicles are going to pull up at some place and start rounding people up. That's the whole point, somewhat, of this operation that the White House is conducting. Is they're using the element of surprise. They're using unmarked vehicles, things of that nature, to ostensibly cause fear. They've said in the past that they want immigrants to self-deport, and so this element of surprise. For people in Atlanta, it may happen in your city. It may already be happening. And so, it's something to watch out for. And you had protests there last night, and those protests will likely continue if it does happen. Yeah.
Let's bring it back to Los Angeles real quickly here. Governor Gavin Newsom said that it's just about politics, not about safety. What's the Trump administration main justification for it?
Well, the justification is just that these Democratic leaders in so-called blue states or blue cities are not taking responsibility for quelling any violence that's taking place in their cities. Now, the governor has insisted that the LAPD and the county sheriff's office had the situation under control, and they've been able to take it. So far, the Trump administration is sending nearly 5,000 military members to this 1 square mile area. In a very big show of force for a relatively small area. But the White House says that they will not tolerate any breakdown of law and order.
So, Chris, can you break down for us the cost of his operation, if you know, and who's having to pay for this?
Yeah, yesterday, Democrats on the Hill here asked Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth that very question, and he seemed not to want to answer it, but the Pentagon later revealed that the cost to deploy the National Guard to L.A. at this point, the total is somewhere around $134 million. And who's paying it? We all are, taxpayers.
Jeez. Well, is there any backlash coming from Capitol Hill?
Yeah, Democrats are making a lot of noise about this, but being in the minority in both houses of Congress, there's not a ton that they can do other than ask tough questions and rally their constituents to, there's been open calls by some members of Congress for their constituents to protest, to continue to exercise their First Amendment rights. And that's about, what they can do other than holding oversight hearings or questioning people during oversight hearings. That's kind of the extent of what's going on, but they're certainly becoming more vocal, many of the Democratic members of Congress, as this goes on. And you see that Democratic leaders not in Congress, like Gavin Newsom last night, he gave a major address to the people of California and basically said that this is an authoritarian power grab.
All right, Chris Pallone in Washington, D.C., thanks for all your insight, man. We'll be checking in with you, of course, every day as this starts to amp up even more.
Got it.
All right. Plenty more stories for you coming up, folks. This is The Take. We're back right after this. Welcome back to the show. 3 Georgia Public Service Commissioners are being accused of violating state rules. And now several nonprofits are demanding they bow out of an upcoming decision to possibly freeze Georgia Power's base rate. Let's welcome to the show Patty Duran, founder of the group Georgia for Affordable Energy. Patty, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right. Last month, Governor Kemp endorsed a proposed deal with Georgia Power to freeze electricity rates for 3 years, framing it as a compromise. Talk about where you and your organization stands on this decision.
This decision is horrible for Georgia Power ratepayers. It is devastating because normally after an integrated resource plan, which is a long-range plan for meeting Georgia Power's projected energy demand future, in the fall there is a rate case where we can learn what the costs of all of those plans are. But this rate freeze cancels that hearing. And so we do not know what the costs are going to be of Georgia Power's expansion of the grid for data centers. And so the rate freeze is a Trojan horse. It pretends to offer benefits to Georgia Power customers when it's the opposite. It harms them.
Last month, Georgia PSC Chairman Jason Shaw said this about that proposed freeze rate. Take a listen.
So to freeze base rates for 3 years is a very big deal for our state, and it's good for Georgians, and we're very proud.
So what are your comments about his comments?
Yeah. So there is a rule at the commission that prohibits them from stating any position or opinion on cases before the commission. And that's because the Public Service Commission is a quasi-judicial body with commissioners acting as judges. So Commission Chair Shaw making that statement would be the same as if a judge said, wow, I can't believe that husband cheated on that wife. I can't wait for that couple to get in my courtroom because I'm going to stick it to them. Like, judges do not state positions on parties before them. And that's what Commission Chair Shaw did. He basically said, I'm all for this plan that Georgia Power wants, without any hearings or any public comment or any information from the details of this. And it's just wrong because it's, even if it was a good thing, he violated those rules, but it's not a good thing.
Gotcha. So explain how this could help or hurt low income and fixed income households.
Sure. Georgia Power was having trouble delivering Plant Vogtle. As we know, that project took 15 years. It's the only nuclear plant built in the United States in the last 30 years. It was $17 billion over budget, and it's enormous cost to Georgians. It raised our rates 24% after years of Georgia Power saying it would only be 2%. And so in 2019, the commission raised Georgia Power's profit margins on a metric called return on equity far above utility industry norms. And it delivers hundreds of millions of dollars in excess profits to Georgia Power annually. And that ROE was going to be lowered this fall. Job one, return it to earth, bring it back to industry norms, because Plant Vogtle was completed last year and Georgia Power no longer needs or deserves a high ROE. And the reason for the high profits was because of the financial risks to a corporation that markets will punish for failure to deliver or do a good job. And so the risk was credit markets, bond prices, stock declines, and the commission didn't want to see that happen to Georgia Power, so they gave them all these extra profits to ensure it didn't happen. Well, Vogtle's done, so let's get the profits back to reasonable levels. That's one thing. There are two others. The other one is what I said earlier. We can't know what this expansion of the grid, which is a heavy fossil fuel, lots and lots of new gas, let's keep the coal going, all that for data centers. We don't know what those costs are without a rate hearing this fall. And the last one is, this is a gift to incumbents. It's not a coincidence that Georgia Power is offering a rate freeze. The first time in 5 years there's been elections for Public Service Commission seats. In fact, I was looking forward to seeing commissioners navigate a $1 billion rate increase while trying to garner votes after all the billions they've already saddled Georgia Power customers with. But that won't happen now.
All right, Patty Duran, thanks so much for joining us today. Thanks so much for your insight.
Thank you.
All right. Don't go anywhere, folks. Coming up on the show, we're going to serve up some smart tips for those traveling without having to pay those extra airline fees. You're going to want to stick around for this. Plenty more stories for you coming up. This is The Take. Well, flying out for summer vacation may be on the top of your mind, but you need to watch out. Some additional costs for things like baggage fees and seat selection can add up quickly and appear to be on the rise. It's a topic that Lisa Fogarty, with the Home and Trends writer for Consumer Reports, has been tracking. Lisa, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right. How hidden are these fees from travelers, and why don't airlines want people to notice them?
I wouldn't say that they're hidden fees. I'll say that they're fees that you may not be expecting. These ancillary fees are fees that nearly every airline has. They include fees for food that you have to purchase online, fees for checked bags, fees for even something like printing out your boarding pass at the airport. So you have to really be careful and go to the airline website, even if you book your tickets someplace else, and make sure you check the fine print for what you will have to pay for on board.
Our airlines, obviously our airlines are banking on this, maybe that you don't see it or whatever. Why don't they want us to notice it?
Well, so the thing is, if you see a really great fare online, like I always come across, $400 to go to Europe, and you think, take my money, this is amazing. And you want to book that fare and you want it to work out. And then as you go along, you'll see all these extra, costs that add up for choosing your seat, for checking your bag. So I'm sure the airlines feel like that base cost is something that's going to attract a lot more travelers without realizing that those extra costs can really add up fast.
Is that the most common mistake travelers make, not looking deeply into the cost, the full cost?
I think that's one of the most common mistakes. The other common mistake is booking that basic economy airfare, thinking that you're getting a real deal, whereas you should really look at the premium economy airfare, the one step up, just to compare and make sure that the costs really are, that they really do add up to what you want to pay. Because sometimes you pay a little bit more for that base airfare, you're making up the difference by not having to pay for those extra additional ancillary fees.
So this may make someone look at one of those low costing or low budget airlines instead. How can folks balance that low ticket with the potential additional fees?
A lot of those low-cost airfares, those are the airfares that, you think that you're getting a great base fare, but in fact, if you look at the costs, some of the airlines don't even allow checked bags. Sorry, not checked bags. They don't even allow for carry-ons without paying a cost. So you really have to be careful and not think that you're just getting a great fare just because the airline is a low-cost air carrier.
Are more airlines going to this fee-based structure? Should we be aware of that?
Yes. In fact, recently Southwest was, I think, one of the airlines that we counted on for having that free checked bag policy. And they just recently changed their checked bag policy where now they are charging for checked bags. So that's way more in line with the other airline carriers. So this is something we're seeing across the board. All of the airlines are charging these fees.
Are there any airlines better than the other when it comes to presenting these fees up front?
I don't know if there's any airline that's more transparent. I feel that you do really have to be careful and go to the airline website. So if you're booking with American Airlines and you book on Travelocity, let's just say, or Google Flights, make sure you go to American Airlines and also look at the fine print on the website, because you may not always see them, on every website where you're booking airfare.
Lisa, would you say that it's still the tried and true of knowing way ahead of time where you're going? Is that the ultimate saver?
So it depends. Booking way ahead of time and having a low-cost airfare, like a basic airfare that you can't change the ticket if the price gets better, isn't really going to do you any good. I think the better method is to make sure that you're taking steps before you travel to cut down on those costs. So, for example, try to pack everything in a carry-on luggage, which I know sounds impossible for some of us, but if you take a few steps ahead of time, making sure that you're planning your outfits correctly and properly, and you're able to reuse the same pieces, buy your food before you get on the airplane so that A, you're getting a meal that you probably want to eat, but also B, you're not spending all those fees on board for food. Little things like that, buying a luggage weight, so that if you are checking bags, you can weigh your luggage at home, because if your luggage is over 50 pounds for most airlines, you're going to pay some hefty fees, some as much as $100 for being like 1 pound overweight. Wow. So there are steps you definitely just want to take ahead of time to cut down on those costs.
All right, so on our next segment, Lisa's going to show us how to fold those clothes to get them all in that carry-on.
Yes, I will. I'll help you out there, don't worry.
Really appreciate it, Lisa, with Consumer Reports. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
All right. And I need that help. All right, coming up, lessons learned from the longest criminal trial in state history, the 11Alive RICO trial. You're watching The Take. We're back. Roughly 2.5 years after jury selection began for the first YSL trial, the Spalding RICO gang case is closed, with the final defendant in the second trial pleading out his case earlier this week. Now, Christian Eppinger entered what's called a Alford plea that allowed him to accept the practical outcome of a guilty plea while maintaining his innocence. He faced 15 counts of the original RICO indictment, including 2 counts of attempted murder. 4 of his charges were ultimately not prosecuted. Of the original 28 indicted, 19 were convicted on various charges or took plea deals, and there were no murder convictions. But now there are many questions over how this all was handled. Here to help bring some context to this is friend of the show, my friend, former Fulton County Assistant District Attorney. And we're talking about Darrell Cohen. Darrell, welcome to the show, my friend.
Good morning. How are you? Sometimes I have accountability, sometimes not. Good morning.
I really appreciate that. Now, all right, so let's talk about this case, right? Looking at the overall outcome of the YSL trial, including the length, the cost, the absence of a murder conviction, do you think, or do you believe this was a success for the prosecution?
The answer is no, but possibly yes. Now, how does a political answer like that get explained? We start with there were no murder convictions. Longest case in the history of the state of Georgia. On its surface, it appears that the DA's office lost. Not really. Number one, They have said, if you mess around, if you commit crimes and you're part of a gang or what we believe to be part of a gang, we're coming after you. Now, we always prefer as a prosecutor to get a conviction, but if we don't, we have punished the defendant by he or she spending unbelievable amounts of time wondering, will I be convicted? I think I won't be, but I might. That's one thing. Defendants also, if they're not appointed a public defender, have to spend unbelievable amounts of money to defend themselves. So the prosecutors didn't completely lose. When I was a prosecutor, there were times we tried a case that we knew we couldn't win, but sometimes you don't get a conviction, but you get even. You let them know, if this happens again, we're coming after you. Now, having said that, I think the DA's office violated one of the principal rules of a prosecution. KISS, keep it short, stupid, keep it simple, stupid. When you have a case this big, it's complicated. You have to simplify it for the jury, because these jurors, for the most part, are very nice. They're good people. They're intelligent people, but they don't have the expertise as a lawyer. So you have to, I hate to use the word dumb it down, you have to bring it to them. So the prosecutor needs to be on the bottom talking up to a jury, not talking to or down to a jury. That makes a major difference. And here, the judge lost control of the courtroom early on. What happened in the courtroom was unmentionable in my view. Had I been that judge and somebody, as a prosecutor or as a defense lawyer, didn't do what he or she should do, I would say overruled. If they continue to argue with me, or if they raise their voice, I would find them in contempt, and that contempt can carry with it a fine. It can carry with it some incarceration. Yep. Judges cannot lose control of a courtroom, and he did. He did.
You said you work both sides of the courtroom, obviously. How do you assess the strategy employed by District Attorney Fani Willis in pursuing such a sweeping RICO case?
Not what I would have done, but I also am not an elected district attorney. Fani's good people. Fani knows her cases, but what happened is it became unwieldy. And for weeks at a time, nothing would appear to be happening. You can't do that to a jury. You can't have a jury can't expect that jury to focus in on what they need to focus in to unless it's in front of them. And keep it simple, stupid, kiss, kiss, kiss. And they lost that KISS method. Having said that, there were 19 convictions, not bad. There were unbelievable amounts of money spent, not good. Wow. It has sent a message that if you commit crimes in my jurisdiction, we're coming after you. Yeah. And it doesn't mean you're going to get a conviction all the time, but you're definitely going to get some sweat.
So quickly, what are the lessons learned on both sides, from the prosecution and the defense?
Well, defense, unless you have a client that has the ability to compensate you for a long period of time, you really don't want it unless you're brand new and you need the publicity. For the prosecution, I would have separated these cases and tried them not collectively, but individually, keeping it simple, keeping it short, and most importantly, keep it focused. You mentioned the Alford plea, and I think it's important for people to know what that is. Many years ago, there was a case in North Carolina where the guy said, I'm innocent, but I think there is enough evidence to convict me. I would like to plead not guilty, but I still want to say it's okay. So the Supreme Court said, you can do that. You don't have to admit you're guilty, but you can say, you can admit under oath that there is enough evidence to convict me. So that is why we have the Alford plea, which is tantamount to guilty, but it makes people feel better.
Gotcha. All right. Darrell Cohen, always appreciate your insight. We'll see you again. We'll be talking about the Diddy trial coming up here pretty soon as well.
Take care, my friend.
All right. Folks, it is going to be a warm one on the outside today. You're looking at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, where it's undergoing some transformation, right? We got a big World Cup event coming here in 2026, and so they are already starting some of the renovation on that. We're going to be talking about that, of course, in my final take coming up here in just a few minutes. But you can see the sunshine on the outside, a few clouds on the outside as well. Maybe a stray shower or two. You may have that out there today. That's a beautiful building that we have right there. Yep. And pretty soon it will host the World Cup. That's a big deal for us, folks. We're going to be looking at that coming up. All right, speaking of infrastructure, one of the big infrastructure projects in Cobb County. After some delays and, of course, some cost concerns, it's finally starting to take a little shape here. Here to talk more about the transformation of the Windy Hill Road expansion boulevard into a boulevard is Greg Teague. He joins us now. Hey, Greg, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Chesley. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Let's talk about the need for this project and how it came to be.
Well, this is a project that's, as you said, it's been in the works for a while, but there's over 25,000 cars a day go along this Windy Hill corridor. And this mile-long section, which goes from South Cobb Drive to Atlanta Road in Smyrna, has a high school, has an elementary school, has a lot of residential neighborhoods on each side of the street. And when you're trying to deal with how do you move that much traffic through these neighborhoods, through the city, how do you do it more safely? So the existing roadway was just a wide road with a two-way left turn lane in the middle. It was really dangerous for pedestrians to try to go across to get to those schools, to get back and forth to those homes. So what the city and Cobb County envisioned with this was how do we separate the traffic that wants to go just from West Cobb, Paulding County to I-75 from the local traffic that's trying to get to those neighborhoods, the schools, the post office, everything else in that neighborhood. So this boulevard concept actually separates those out. It gives us 4 express lanes in the center of the roadway that allow that through traffic to pass safely through the city. Those 25,000 vehicles would have had to go through 6 intersections and have over 70 driveways just in that stretch. All of those got eliminated from the express lanes, but they're still accessible from those local lanes. These local lanes will be about 25 miles per hour. We've got speed tables on them to help keep the traffic slow. We've got multi-use trails. We've got landscaping so that now those neighborhoods and that pedestrian traffic feels like they can safely get from one side of this large roadway to the other because now they're up on those bridges away from that main commuter traffic that's down in the express lanes.
Greg, I'll tell you, I take this every day, right? And I saw it being built. I saw it being played out.
Well, that's your heart.
And I thought, okay, are they putting a subway down there? What are they doing? And so now I get it. I get it. I drive it every morning. And so you want to take that, I take the express lane part. How tricky was it to plan all this together between that express lane and the neighborhoods?
It was tricky, but what we did is, if you kind of look at it, if you go back and think about how Windy Hill was before, since you drive it every day, where the 2 bridges are now, those were tops of hills. So instead of changing the grade at those neighborhoods on those side streets and those driveways, what we did is we took those express lanes and we took them down under those hilltops and then built those bridges there. So that way it had the least amount of disruption to those adjacent properties.
Is it still being worked on quickly? Is there more to be done?
So it is wrapping up. So this week, as you mentioned, the express lanes are fully open now, fully under traffic. The local lanes are getting paved this week. We're doing that at night to try to minimize the traffic disruption. So we hope for the paving, if the weather holds, and we're looking to you to help us with that. If the weather holds, we should have most of the paving completed this week and pretty well be substantially complete by the end of the month with most everything. There'll still be some driveway tie-ins and some landscaping, but the majority of the work should be done later this month.
Well, Greg, it looks good, and do everything early, all right? Don't wait till the afternoon because the rain will come by then. Greg T, really appreciate you joining us for today, and thanks for your insight on this.
Chesley, thanks for having us.
All right, folks, you are watching The Take. Don't go anywhere. We're going to talk about investment strategies coming up. All right, welcome back to the show. General Motors is putting billions on the table, and it's not just about building cars. CNN's Maribel Aber joins us now from the NASDAQ market site in New York City. Good morning, Maribel, and talk to us about this massive investment GM is making.
Hey, good morning, Chesley. Well, General Motors plans to invest $4 billion to boost production in the U.S. The money will go to 3 assembly plants located in Michigan, Kansas, and Tennessee. GM will also move or increase production of 2 vehicles produced in Mexico to U.S. plants. The automaker will add assembly of the gas-powered Chevy Blazer and Equinox to its U.S. facilities. And the move comes after President Trump earlier this year implemented 25% tariffs on vehicles imported to the U.S. The new investment will take place right through 2027, and GM says it will allow it to assemble more than 2 million vehicles per year in the U.S. The investment comes as there are a few signs of progress in trade talks between the U.S. and Mexican leaders, which we keep watching closely, Chesley.
All right, got some big changes brewing at Google, one of their most profitable divisions. Talk to us about that.
Google is looking to trim its workforce by offering buyouts. So CNBC reporting here, buyouts are being offered to several divisions, including the one that's home to Google's search business. Google continues to try and reduce headcount after laying off 12,000 employees in 2023. And the company's finance chief has said a top priority is cost cutting. So those efforts come as Google expands its spending on artificial intelligence infrastructure this year. And the tech giant has already done multiple buyout offers in a few units this year. These buyouts are becoming sort of a preferred strategy to reduce headcount, especially after Google faced backlash following that big round of layoffs in 2023, Chesley.
All right, sounds like your next coffee run might come with a high-tech twist. What's that all about?
Yes. Starbucks baristas will soon be getting an assist from artificial intelligence. Speaking of, the coffee chain is rolling out an AI tool aimed at simplifying a barista's job and speeding up service. It's called Green Dot Assist. Workers can access it on tablets behind the counter. Now, baristas will be able to quickly find answers on how to make drinks, troubleshoot equipment problems, and other things. Using in-store tablets instead of sort of flipping through manuals should help Starbucks workers get quick answers, and it can help on a variety of tasks from shift planning to store performance, even refreshers on the ingredients used in those seasonal beverages. A Green Dot Assist will start in 35 Starbucks locations this month. Chesley, Starbucks plans a broader launch across the U.S. and Canada in the next fiscal year, which begins in the fall.
All right, sounds good. And finally, you got a game on Nintendo as one of its iconic consoles just not reaching that level no one saw coming, huh?
Let me tell you, it was a record-breaking start, Chesley, for Nintendo Switch 2. We saw the lines. Nintendo sold more than 3.5 million of the gaming consoles in the 4 days following its launch. The Switch 2 went on sale last Thursday, quickly sold out at many retailers. Nintendo was hoping to sell 15 million of the consoles by the end of next March. Some analysts believe that sales target is low. They expect sales of 20 million by then. The Switch 2 is Nintendo's first new console in 8 years. The original Switch sold 15 million units in its first year and went on to sell more than 152 million units overall. It's the second highest selling Nintendo device ever, behind the Nintendo DS. Chesley, gamers be gaming, and if you compare games back to our day, because we've got some miles, Pac-Man, Donkey Kong, you need a real console now because all that stuff's real.
Yeah, they have real characters and everything. I get it. Yeah. It's been a while. Yeah. It's been a while, Mary Bell. You probably could beat me today. Back in the day, it was a different story, but today you probably could beat me. Thanks so much for playing. All right, appreciate it. All right, we got plenty more stories in store for you folks. Plus, we're going to talk about why there's a rise in gun deaths amongst young people. This is The Take. We're back right after this. All right, new data showing states with looser gun laws are seeing thousands more pediatric firearm deaths. This is raising urgent concern about how firearm policy affects child safety and public health. Joining us now is Dr. Stephen Patrick. He is the chair of Emory's Department of Health Policy and Management. Welcome to the show, Dr. Patrick.
Great to be here.
All right, talk to us about firearms are now the leading cause of death among children, U.S. children. What are the main factors driving this tragic trend?
Well, what we've seen over the last couple of years, it's not new this year, is that firearms are the leading cause of deaths among U.S. children. And we've seen deaths grow over the last decade. One of the reasons is what you highlighted before are what states are doing about this. How are we protecting kids from firearms through things like safe storage?
So talk to me about the difference in community violence, access to firearms, mental health and resources, all that, comes together in the risk of these deaths.
Yeah, as you point out, it's multiple factors that may lead to this. So certainly we've seen community violence, certainly we've seen school violence. And so what we're seeing is just a mix of everything that kids are facing today. So one of the things we did this year was we asked Georgia parents, what are you worried about for your kids? And about a quarter of Georgia parents were worried in their top 3 about firearms. One of the other things that we found was that about half of Georgia parents own firearms. So as we think about kids navigating Georgia, there's a lot of firearms around. And what I think as a pediatrician, one of the things to encourage folks to do is to keep those firearms safely stored. We know that if you safely store them, that is the first line of defense to keeping kids safe. We also asked Georgia parents, would you support incentives, whether that was for your homeowner's insurance or tax incentives, to incentivize folks to keep firearms safe? 80% said yes. And then we also asked them, what about civil and criminal penalties for folks who don't keep firearms safe? 80% of Georgia parents said they would support that too. So I think what we're seeing is over the last decade, many states, including Georgia, have loosened gun laws. So we've seen in Georgia the public transportation carry law, the bars and restaurant carries law, even a law that's called Guns Everywhere Act. And while I think what I think the message is, we can honor the Second Amendment while keeping this public health threat to kids first of mind, to protect our kids.
Yeah. Where do we rank? Where does Georgia rank amongst the rest of the nation? Do we know?
Yeah, we rank pretty low. So one of the things that we see, whether we look at where Brady ranks states, they give us an F in terms of where we are. In the study that you cited before, Georgia falls in the state that is among the most permissive states in terms of gun laws. So there are very few protections here. And, I think there are paths forward where we can say, and most Georgians agree, where we can prioritize keeping kids safe and allow people to have firearms. We've done this before. So, auto accidents used to be a leading cause of death for adults and kids. And we had some public health protections, whether that's child safety seats, guardrails, the way we've changed technology in cars. We can do the same for firearms and not impede on people's rights.
Do you think we're going to have to get tighter on the laws? You may have heard recently about the sheriff who left his gun in the bathroom. He was dealing with his grandson at the time, and then another kid came in and got that gun, and it went off. And nothing happened there. But do you think we just need to tighten down or buckle up some of the laws?
Yes, and I think some of this is around personal responsibility too. I mean, if you own a firearm, which again, half of Georgia parents do, it's your duty to keep it safe and to keep it locked in the way that we know, keeping it unloaded and keeping the ammunition as well as the firearm separate. And I also think there are steps, I'm a parent, I'm a pediatrician, that we can take too. When we know our kid is going over to someone's house, we can ask that parent, hey, do you have a firearm and is it kept safely secure? That conversation feels awkward initially, but once you have it the first time, it gets a little bit easier. Yeah. And just knowing that about half the time your kid's going into a house where there's a firearm.
That's absolutely right. I mean, and it's better to be safe than sorry. I totally understand that. Dr. Baxter, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for your insight on this particular topic.
Good to be here. Thank you.
All right. Folks, you don't want to go anywhere. My final take is coming up right after this. All right, it's going to be a warm one today. In fact, very warm, 88 degrees for the afternoon high temperature. We don't have as much humidity around because of a front that has now passed through the area and actually stalled just to our south. And so drier air has worked in, especially for our northernmost counties. 88 degrees will be our afternoon high temperature today with only a 20% chance for an isolated shower. That moisture comes back to us by tomorrow. So with the daytime heating of 86 on Thursday, we'll see scattered showers, thunderstorms popping up. Going to give it a 40% chance. We'll continue that on Friday, and by Saturday it goes up to a 50% chance. Continues on Sunday, unsettled weather. Even into next week, we're looking at the possibility for some scattered thunderstorms. This will be mainly during the afternoon, every afternoon upcoming. That's the way it's going to be, and the temperatures remain steady. Again, in the mid to upper 80s. When you factor in humidity, it's going to feel closer to 90 degrees. All right, football venues across the United States are getting ready for the World Cup in 2026, and that means changes have to come to the field. Yeah, changing it from turf to natural grass. Big deal, right? That will be the case for the upcoming FIFA Club World Cup. That's preparations are being done, as we're seeing right there over Mercedes-Benz Stadium. They're getting the turf ready right now. World Cup regulations state that matches must be played on natural grass, or provide some special dispensation granted by FIFA on artificial surfaces. Now, in fact, artificial turf has never been used for any of the men's tournaments. Why is that significant? Controversy, folks. Players in the NFL have long fought to play on natural grass. They believe that lower body injuries happen more so on turf. Now, that's not been proven, but that's what they believe. 15 of the stadiums in the league use artificial turf. All right. Now, 8 of the 16 venues are hosting for the World Cup. That includes Mercedes-Benz Stadium right there. So the question is, will the grass stay? Not likely. Yeah, the owners like that low maintenance cost, durability, and you can play all year round. So if you're looking for your Atlanta Falcons to play on natural gas, keep guessing. Or you may have to pay a higher ticket price. How about that? That's all we got for you today, folks. Enjoy today and encourage somebody. Do something special for someone today.